Welcome to the Honolulu Fire Department's Physical Ability Test for Firefighter Recruit Class Candidates, also known as the PAT. The PAT is comprised of two activities, the PAT Course Events activity and the Swim Dive activity. Each is administered on a pass-fail basis. Candidates must pass the first activity to be eligible for the next activity. You are allowed one attempt to pass each activity. You must pass both to successfully complete the PAT. The PAT Course Events activity was developed and validated with 41 departments in Southern California. Its purpose was to provide one standard that could be used with the 41 departments involved in this project. This activity was designed to identify qualified candidates who can meet the physical demands of a firefighter. This activity is a work sample test designed to simulate tasks performed by firefighters during fire suppression operations or other emergency situations. The tasks performed in the events were identified as critical and important by hundreds of incumbent firefighters. The equipment, weights, and distances used in the events were also determined from firefighters' survey responses. See a proctor or test administrator to find out the time in which you must complete all the events. This activity is strenuous and physically demanding. It requires a significant amount of strength and endurance to complete. We strongly recommend that you consult with a physician before you participate. Candidates will need to know some basic information. You must arrive at the testing site at least 15 minutes before your assigned test time, wearing closed-toe, preferably athletic shoes, 5-toed barefoot shoes, sandals, slippers, clogs, or any other open-toed footwear will not be allowed. You must sign a liability waiver prior to this activity. You will not be allowed to participate if you have not turned in your liability form. Please remember to stay hydrated prior to and during the testing process. You are not allowed to run between test events. However, you may run safely within each event. You will be provided with a turnout coat, helmet, gloves, and breathing apparatus. Knee pads will be available and candidates are encouraged to use them. If you have any questions about how to wear the equipment, ask the test proctor when you receive your items. It is your responsibility to ensure that you are wearing all of the appropriate equipment prior to getting on the course. You will not be allowed to participate in this activity without all the necessary equipment. If you have any questions about the PAT, a test proctor will be available to answer your questions. Let's take a closer look at the PAT Course Events activity. Event 1 is the dry hose drag. This event simulates deploying a hose line from a hose bed to the seat of a fire. When performing this event, candidates should place the hose nozzle over their shoulders and onto their chest, keeping one hand on the hose nozzle at all times. Candidates are not allowed to carry any additional hose on them. It is important for candidates to lean their way forward when performing the event. Candidates may run safely during the dry hose drag. When deploying the hose around the obstacles, candidates shall overshoot or go past the obstacle and touch the designated area on the course before making the turn. This will reduce the friction on the hose and make it easier to deploy. Candidates are not allowed to go backward on the course to pull more hose. At the completion of the event, candidates are required to place and not throw the hose nozzle in the designated area. If the hose nozzle is not placed within the designated area, candidates will be asked to go back and set the nozzle in the appropriate place. Event 2 is the charge hose drag. This event simulates the extending of a supply line into a hot and smoky environment to supply water for firefighting operations. When performing this event, candidates should place the hose nozzle over their shoulders and onto their chests, keeping one hand on the hose nozzle at all times. It is important for candidates to lean their weight forward when performing the event. Candidates may run safely during the charge hose drag. When deploying the hose past the obstacle, candidates shall overshoot or go past the obstacle and touch the designated area on the course before making the turn. This will once again reduce the friction on the hose and make it easier to deploy. At the completion of the event, candidates are required to place and not throw the hose nozzle in the designated area. If the hose nozzle is not placed within the designated area, candidates will be asked to go back and set the nozzle in the appropriate place. After a successful completion of the charge hose drag, candidates should walk to the next event. Event 3 is the halyard raise. This event simulates extending the fly section of a ladder in order to access higher floors for rescue, ventilation, and other firefighting operations. Candidates are required to brace one foot against the base of the ladder, also known as footing the ladder. If candidates do not properly foot the ladder, they will be asked to lower the ladder and begin the event again. Candidates may use one of two methods for raising the extension ladder. The candidates may use a thumbs up, hand over hand raise, or a thumbs down, hand over hand raise. Candidates are allowed to use a two-handed method to begin the raise, but must continue the event with a hand over hand technique. Candidates are not allowed to jump up and grasp the halyard. Both feet must remain on the ground at all times. Candidates are not allowed to crouch down and use their lower body to perform the raise. If the rope slips through the candidate's hands during the halyard raise, the candidate must restart the event from the beginning. If the rope slips through the candidate's hands a second time during the halyard raise, the candidate is disqualified from the test. After successful completion of the halyard raise, the candidate should once again walk to the next event. Event 4 is the roof walk. This event simulates walking on the roof ladder with appropriate equipment for ventilation purposes. Candidates are required to touch every rung on the way up the ladder with at least 1 foot, including the rung near the top of the ladder designated with tape or paint. If candidates skip rungs on the way up the ladder, they will be required to start the event from the beginning. Candidates are not required to touch every rung on the way down the ladder. Candidates must back down the ladder in a manner that is comfortable and safe. Candidates are not allowed to turn around and walk down the ladder. If candidates fail to back down the ladder, they will be required to return to the point at which they turned forward. Candidates are allowed to slide the chainsaw along the roof when backing down the ladder. Candidates may also carry the chainsaw when backing down the ladder. The chainsaw must be returned to the designated area after completion of the event. If candidates do not return the chainsaw to the designated area, they will be asked to put it in the proper place before going on to the next event. Event 5 is the attic crawl. This event simulates searching for the extension of a fire in a confined space with restricted heights and joist walkways, such as in an attic. Candidates are required to pick up the simulated flashlight and proceed across the attic prop, staying below the barriers. Candidates must either crawl on their hands and knees across the attic prop, or candidates may crab walk on their hands and feet, as long as they stay below the barriers. Candidates must place the simulated flashlight in a designated area to signify the completion of the event. If a candidate knocks over a barrier or falls into the space between the joists, the proctor will reset the barrier or tarp, and the candidate will restart the event from the beginning. After successful completion of the attic crawl, candidates should walk to the next event. Event 6 is the ventilation exercise. This event simulates making a ventilation opening on a roof in order to ventilate a fire. Candidates will pick up the sledgehammer from the designated area. Candidates can either place 1 foot on the footrest provided, or stand closer to the strike area if desired. For each strike, the candidates are required to raise the sledgehammer above their helmet and strike the roof while maintaining control of the sledgehammer. The following are examples of 2 methods that may be used by candidates. With the first method, candidates may place both hands at the bottom of the sledgehammer for each strike. With the second method, candidates can slide their top hand to the top of the sledgehammer and back down to the bottom of the sledgehammer for each strike while swinging the hammer in a roundhouse motion. Both methods require the sledgehammer to be brought above the helmet on each strike. The number of strikes will be counted out loud by the proctor during the event. Improper strikes will not be counted. An improper strike is one that is not raised above the helmet, or one in which control of the sledgehammer is not maintained at all times. If the sledgehammer is brought above the helmet and then simply allowed to fall back down on the prop, the candidate is not maintaining control of the sledgehammer. Candidates are not allowed to bend at the waist to shorten their swing length. A strike performed in this fashion will be considered an improper strike. After performing the strikes, the sledgehammer should be placed in the designated area. If candidates do not return the sledgehammer to the designated area, they will be asked to return it to the proper place before going to the next event. Event 7 is a victim removal. This event simulates removing an injured or unconscious victim from a hazardous area. There are several methods that may be used during this event. Candidates may grab the dummy underneath the arms, lift the torso of the dummy off the ground, and drag the dummy around the course. Candidates may also grab the dummy over the arms, lift the torso of the dummy off the ground, and drag the dummy around the course. Candidates may grab the dummy by one or two arms and drag the dummy around the course. And lastly, candidates may carry the dummy, although this method is the most time-consuming and strenuous. Candidates may not drag the dummy by the head, feet, or clothes. Regardless of the method used, candidates must move the dummy completely around the course and place the dummy back in the starting position with the feet of the dummy over the line. After successful completion of the victim removal, candidates should walk to the next event. Event 8 is a ladder removal and carry. This event simulates removing an extension ladder from an apparatus, carrying the ladder to the site of use, and placing the ladder back on the apparatus. There are 3 methods that may be used when completing this event: the high shoulder carry, the low shoulder carry, and the suitcase carry. With all methods, candidates should begin by finding the balance point of the ladder. The middle of the ladder, which should provide the best balance point, will be marked. The first method is the high shoulder carry. In the high shoulder carry, the entire ladder sits on top of the candidate's shoulder. Candidates may place the ladder directly on their shoulder from the mounted hooks and proceed around the designated area, replacing the ladder on the hooks directly from the shoulder. The second method is a low shoulder carry. In the low shoulder carry, the top beam of the ladder sits on the top of the candidate's shoulder. Candidates may place the ladder directly on their shoulder from the mounted hooks and proceed around the designated area, replacing the ladder on the hooks directly from their shoulder. The third method is a suitcase carry. In this method, the top beam of the ladder is held in one arm like a suitcase. If, in the proctor's opinion, the candidate loses control of the ladder, the proctor may intervene. The proctor will take the ladder from the candidate, placing it on the ground at the place where the candidate lost control. The candidate can then pick up the ladder in any fashion and continue. When replacing the ladder, both ends of the ladder must be in control and off the ground. If one end of the ladder hits the ground or strikes the apparatus in an uncontrolled fashion during replacement, the proctor will assist the candidate in grounding the ladder, and the candidate will be then required to replace it properly. The ladder must be placed on the hooks in their original position. The ladder will be marked to assist candidates in this process. If the ladder is not placed in the original position, candidates will be required to remove the ladder and place it in a proper position. Candidates are not allowed to lean or brace the ladder during replacement. While performing this event, candidates are allowed 2 penalties. A penalty includes any of the following: when candidates drop the ladder, when candidates lose control of the ladder and the proctor assists in grounding, when candidates voluntarily ground the ladder to gain stability, and lastly, when the ladder falls over the head of the candidate with the candidate's head between the ladder rungs. In this case, the proctor will assist in the removal and grounding of the ladder. If a third penalty occurs, candidates will be disqualified. After successful completion of the event, candidates should once again walk to the next event. Event 9 is a crawling search. This event simulates searching for victims in a smoky or toxic environment. Candidates are required to crawl on their hands and knees. After successful completion of the event, candidates should once again walk to the next event. Event 10 is the stair climb with hose. This event simulates climbing stairs with a hose bundle to aid the extinguishment of a multiple-story fire. There are 2 ways in which the hose bundle may be carried. Candidates may put the hose bundle over their left or right shoulder and proceed up the stairs. Candidates may also carry the hose bundle in their arms, although this method is not the most efficient. Candidates may skip steps on the way to the fourth floor. Candidates are not allowed to skip steps on their way down the stairs to the ground floor. If candidates fail to touch a step with their foot, they will be required to go back and touch that step before proceeding down the stairs. The test time will stop after the candidate has crossed the finish line. After you completed the test, return all equipment to a test proctor. Also remember that it is important to take the time for a proper cool down, such as walking for a brief period instead of immediately sitting down. If you feel that you are in need of any medical attention, notify a proctor immediately. This concludes our presentation of the physical ability test. We wish you all the best of luck, and remember, see a physician before participating in the physical ability test. The other activity is a swim and dive. The candidate will have 2 minutes and 45 seconds to complete this activity. Each candidate will be wearing a swimsuit or swimming trunks. The candidate will be allowed to use their personal swim goggles to perform this activity. The candidate enters the deep end of the pool and waits for the proctor to say go. The candidate then swims to the opposite side of the pool for 50 meters, touches the side, and returns to the deep end of the pool and touches the side. The candidate then dives to the bottom of the pool to retrieve a 10-pound weight. The clock will stop when the candidate resurfaces and touches the side of the pool. After the clock has stopped, the candidate will place the weight in a designated area on the deck of the pool. This is to prevent a candidate from rushing and throwing the weight onto the pool deck. Candidates may stop and catch their breath and hold on to the side of the pool upon completion of the swim at their own discretion, as time will continue to run. While swimming, candidates are not allowed to touch the bottom of the pool, hold on to any side of the pool, or grasp or hang on to the lane marker. A candidate will be allowed a total of 2 warnings of any kind. A third warning will constitute a failure of this activity. Candidates will not be told the time of their swim.